The mockery. The galactic arena was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It wasn't a place for sport. It was a theater of humiliation. The Valari Empire, a species known for their precision and cruelty, had built this amphitheater on their homeworld. Carved into the side of a mountain, the arena opened into the sky, its upper tiers shimmering with containment fields. Tens of thousands of Valari citizens filled the seats, their translucent skin glowing faintly under the artificial suns. They had gathered for one purpose: to laugh at the newest primitive species to crawl into the galactic stage. Humans. At the center of the arena, surrounded by towering Valari guards, stood a lone human soldier, Lieutenant Marcus Hale. He was tall for a human, his shoulders squared, his face calm despite the roars of alien laughter echoing above him. His armor was matte black, seamless, unlike the gleaming plates of the Valari. It looked simple, almost plain, with no spikes, no glowing lines of power, no ornate etchings. To the Valari, it looked pathetic. "Look at the ape!" one voice called from the crowd, amplified by the arena's sound system. "They cover themselves in cloth and call it protection." The arena howled with laughter. Another voice chimed in, mocking. "I've seen kitchen plating stronger than this." The crowd jeered, their laughter shrill and cruel. The Valari enjoyed these spectacles. Whenever a new species dared to join galactic society, the Valari staged these demonstrations, designed to prove superiority, to crush the spirit of newcomers. Marcus stood still, unmoving, as the laughter rained down. His dark visor reflected the jeering faces. He had expected this. What he hadn't expected was the sheer scale of their arrogance. The general's challenge. A deep, booming voice silenced the crowd. From a balcony overlooking the arena, General Threx, commander of the Valari armies, stood tall. His crystalline armor caught the light like a predator's grin. His forearms rested easily on the railing, claws gleaming. "Silence," he commanded, and the crowd obeyed. His voice carried like a storm. He gestured toward Marcus. "Behold, citizens of Velar, the so-called soldier of Earth, wrapped in fragile fabric, armed with nothing but primitive courage. They call this body armor." The crowd laughed again, some even mimicking Marcus's stance in mockery. Threx leaned forward, his vertical eyes glowing. "Let us test this armor. Let us show the galaxy what becomes of primitives who claim to stand equal to us." A platform rose from beneath the arena floor. On it sat a Valari plasma cannon, a weapon feared across the galaxy. Its blasts could melt armored bunkers, tear through starship hulls, and reduce most soldiers to vapor. The sight of it made the crowd shriek in delight. The plasma cannon's barrel glowed, humming with energy. Threx spread his arms wide. "This is our weakest artillery, designed to destroy fortresses. Let us see if the ape survives even a fraction of its power." The arena fell into a hushed, hungry silence. Thousands of eyes fixed on the human standing alone in the sand. Marcus tilted his head slightly, as though listening to something only he could hear. The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely, into a smile. The first blast. The cannon roared. A ball of searing plasma launched forward, a miniature sun streaking across the arena. The air shimmered and cracked under its heat. The crowd gasped in awe, anticipating the moment the human's fragile body would be incinerated. The plasma struck Marcus square in the chest, and stopped, not with an explosion, not with fire. The energy rippled across the surface of his armor like water striking glass. The matte black surface glowed for a brief instant, then swallowed the blast entirely. The air snapped back into silence. Marcus didn't move, not an inch. The crowd blinked in disbelief. Murmurs began, growing louder. "Impossible," one Valari hissed. "No armor can," another stammered. The plasma cannon operator stared at his controls, certain he had misfired. But the readings were clear. A full-strength shot, absorbed completely. Threx narrowed his eyes. The mockery turns. "Again," the general commanded. The cannon hummed louder, charging a second shot. This time, the energy core glowed white-hot, brighter, deadlier. The shot launched, ripping through the arena like a comet. The blast hit Marcus in the chest again. His armor flared brighter this time, glowing lines running momentarily across its surface like veins of molten light. The glow pulsed once, then faded. The blast was gone. Marcus raised his head slightly. His voice carried through the arena's sound system, calm, measured, laced with quiet defiance. "Is that all?" The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in shocked, scattered noise. The Valari, who had gathered to mock, were suddenly silent in their disbelief. "The weapon fails." Threx's voice cut the air. "Maximum charge." The cannon operator hesitated. "General, the armor." "Do it!" Threx roared. The plasma cannon whined, charging to its highest capacity. Sparks danced around its barrel. The energy reading spiked, dangerous even to the operator. The crowd leaned forward, desperate to see the ape obliterated. The cannon fired. The blast was monstrous. An orb of energy so bright it blinded the first rows of spectators. The ground shook as it roared toward Marcus. The explosion engulfed him, flames and light consuming the center of the arena. Sand vaporized into glass. The shockwave rattled the containment fields. Valari spectators roared with triumph. But as the smoke cleared, Marcus still stood. The armor glowed white-hot for a moment, then dimmed. The matte black surface was unmarred, untouched. Marcus exhaled slowly, raised one hand, and patted his chest. "Your aim could use work." The arena fell into stunned silence. The truth of the armor. The Valari were not only shocked, they were terrified. Their weapons were legendary. Their plasma cannons could cut starships in half. Yet here stood a human, unshaken, untouched. What they didn't know, what Marcus had been ordered never to reveal, was the truth. Humanity's armor wasn't just metal. It wasn't just tech. It was a fusion of physics, ingenuity, and desperation. The Aegis Armor Project had been born out of humanity's hopelessness. Earth had watched empires rise and fall in the galaxy, all armed with weapons that could burn planets. Humanity could never outmatch their power, never outbuild their fleets. But they could outthink them. The Aegis armor absorbed energy. Plasma, laser, kinetic impacts, it didn't matter. The more punishment it took, the stronger it became. What the Valari saw as weakness, plain, featureless armor, was the most advanced battlefield technology the galaxy had never seen. And Marcus Hale was wearing its first perfected prototype. The general's fury. The Valari crowd began to murmur in fear. Their laughter was gone. Their arrogance was cracking. General Threx slammed his claws on the railing. His voice thundered. "This is a trick. No primitive could withstand our weapons. Bring more cannons. Bring soldiers. Crush him." Valari guards stormed the arena, their armor gleaming, weapons charged. Marcus rolled his shoulders, flexing his gauntlets. The matte black surface shimmered faintly as the armor prepared itself. For the first time, Marcus spoke not just to the general, but to every Valari in the arena. "You thought we were fragile, that our bodies made us weak. But you forgot the one thing humans always do when we're underestimated." The guards closed in. Their weapons blazed with plasma fire. Marcus's armor flared as the blast struck him, absorbing, drinking in the energy. The black surface glowed brighter and brighter, like a furnace awakening. He clenched his fist. The energy stored within his armor surged, pulsing through his veins like lightning. "We adapt." And in that moment, when the first Valari soldier flew backward from Marcus's counterstrike, armor shattering, weapon exploding, the crowd realized the truth. The mockery was over. The fear had begun. The trial by fire. The training field stretched across a barren expanse outside the Dominion garrison on Varys IV, a planet whose skies were stained a perpetual shade of rust red. Jagged cliffs ringed the horizon, carved by winds sharp enough to flay exposed flesh. Above, banners bearing the sigil of the Zorati Dominion snapped in the arid breeze, their alien script declaring power and dominion over all who gazed upon them. Hundreds of soldiers, alien and otherwise, had gathered. The air pulsed with anticipation. The mocking laughter from the night before had become rumor, and rumor had become spectacle. Every warrior who had heard the tale of the human's fragile armor had come to see the truth for themselves. At the center of the field stood Sergeant Marcus Hale. His stance was easy, almost casual, though his eyes scanned every movement with a predator's discipline. His armor, the so-called relic of failure, gleamed under the harsh sunlight. Unlike the jagged and ornate plates of Dominion wargear, Hale's armor was matte black, smooth, almost understated. Its lack of flourish was an insult in the eyes of the Dominion warriors, who believed glory was earned not only in victory but in spectacle. Today, Hale was to be tested. The challenge. The alien general presiding over the trial was a massive figure, his body encased in crimson armor laced with jagged spikes. His name was Karzul, commander of the Dominion's planetary garrison. His 4 burning eyes glared down at Hale from atop a raised obsidian platform. "This human claims his fragile shell is unbreakable," Karzul announced, his voice carrying across the field like a thunderclap. "Today, we see if his words have teeth." A roar of approval shook the gathering. Alien throats howled and hissed, their serrated weapons clattering against armored legs in a ritual of anticipation. Hale's translator earpiece hummed with the alien tongue, though he didn't need the words to understand their meaning. He simply clasped his helmet under one arm, expression unreadable. Karzul gestured toward a towering war beast tethered at the edge of the field. Its scales shimmered like molten rock, its mouth lined with teeth capable of crushing tanks. "First," the general bellowed, "the beast shall strike him. If his shell endures, we proceed. If not," the crowd erupted with laughter. The end of the sentence was obvious. A Dominion soldier, muscles bulging under his spiked carapace, released the beast's chain. The creature roared, shaking the ground as it thundered toward Hale. Its claws gouged the cracked earth, its breath steaming in the cold desert air. Still, Hale did not move. The beast strike. The war beast lunged, its claws descending in a strike that would have torn a transport apart. The blow connected with Hale's chest plate. Instead of shattering, the armor shimmered, absorbing the force in a ripple of blue light that cascaded across its surface. The crowd gasped as Hale was driven back a single step, dust spraying beneath his boots. He exhaled slowly, as though the strike were no more troubling than a firm shove. The beast, confused, roared again. It struck once more. Then again, claws and fangs clashing against the human's armor. Each blow met the same fate. Absorbed, neutralized, dissolved into harmless light. When the beast recoiled in frustration, Hale finally moved. He raised a gauntlet fist and tapped the beast lightly across the snout. The impact wasn't lethal, but the shockwave of redirected energy blasted the beast backward across the field, slamming it into the ground with a thud that shook the watching crowd. Silence followed. Then came the whispers. The jeers of the night before had curdled into unease. Warriors exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from scorn to something sharper, fear. Hale calmly replaced his helmet, the black visor hissing as it sealed. Escalation. Karzul's eyes narrowed. He would not allow his soldiers' awe to linger. "Tricks," he spat. "Child's tricks. Armor woven with energy buffers. Clever, yes, but not invincible." He raised a clawed hand and beckoned. "Prepare the cannon." From the edge of the field, Dominion engineers dragged forward a weapon the size of a small vehicle. Its barrel glowed with green fire, plasma gathering like liquid sun. This was no ceremonial test. The plasma cannon was battlefield ordnance, designed to melt through bunkers and disintegrate armored convoys. The crowd roared in anticipation. To them, this was final. No armor could withstand such fury. Hale, standing at the center of the field, simply straightened his stance. The deadliest blast. The cannon's whine built to a piercing scream, the air around its barrel warping with heat. Then, with a sound like tearing thunder, the weapon fired. A lance of searing green plasma ripped across the field, a miniature sun tearing through the atmosphere. Soldiers shielded their eyes from the brilliance, some hissing as the heat singed exposed flesh. The blast struck Hale square in the chest. For an instant, the world vanished in light. Dust and sand were hurled into the air, a shockwave flattening banners and toppling nearby soldiers. The air burned with the acrid stench of scorched ozone. When the haze cleared, Hale still stood. His armor glowed, alive with crackling arcs of energy. Plasma rippled harmlessly across its surface, absorbed and redirected into faint, glowing veins that pulsed like living circuitry. With a sharp thunk, the excess energy discharged into the ground, leaving only the faint hiss of cooling stone. Hale's voice cut through the silence, calm and unshaken. "That the best you've got?" The crowd breaks. The silence broke like shattered glass. Some soldiers staggered back, disbelief painted across their alien faces. Others hissed in fear, weapons clattering to the ground as their certainty crumbled. What had been meant as entertainment had turned into a revelation. The human's armor was not merely resilient, it was indomitable. Karzul snarled, claws digging into the obsidian railing of his platform. He barked orders in his guttural tongue, demanding escalation, demanding proof that no single human could mock Dominion power in such a way. But the whispers had begun to spread. Whispers that humans had tamed death itself. Whispers that their armor drank fire and spat it back. Whispers that the Dominion's proudest weapons had failed. And in the center of the storm stood Hale, silent and steady, as though nothing extraordinary had happened at all. A memory of Earth. Inside his helmet, unseen by the aliens, Hale allowed himself the faintest smile. He remembered the fields of Nevada, where his unit had first tested the prototype. The endless drills, the countless failures, the long nights of rewiring power cells and reprogramming adaptive layers. He remembered the engineers, exhausted but defiant, whispering that this armor could turn the tide of war. Now, standing on an alien world surrounded by enemies, Hale understood what they had built. Not just protection, not just survival. A symbol, the general's fury. Karzul rose to his full height, towering over the assembly. "Enough of this!" he roared, voice quaking the very stones beneath him. "You think your armor makes you immortal? Then face me. Human. Face me and die by my hands." The crowd gasped. A direct challenge. No general lowered himself to duel an outworlder. To do so was an admission that the threat was real. But Hale did not hesitate. "Gladly," he said, his voice carrying through the translator with a steady finality. "The duel begins." The crowd surged forward, desperate to witness what would come. The war beast lay groaning in the dust. The plasma cannon hissed with cooling steam. Soldiers pressed shoulder to shoulder, eyes locked on the two figures stepping into the circle. Karzul, a giant even among his kind, drew a massive war axe humming with searing energy. Its blade was forged from star metal, said to cleave through tanks like parchment. Hale, by contrast, drew nothing. He simply raised his armored fists. The alien general sneered. "You mock me with empty hands." "No," Hale replied, his voice calm. "I just don't need anything else." The crowd's hush deepened, the air thick with tension. Above, the rust-red sky seemed to hold its breath. The first blow was about to fall. Duel of fire and shadow. The circle of dust between them became sacred ground. The crowd of Dominion soldiers formed a ring around the makeshift arena, their armor clattering as they leaned in, each one eager to witness the humiliation or miracle that was about to unfold. Above, the rust-red sky dimmed as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, bleeding shadows across the barren cliffs of Verisfor. Sergeant Marcus Hale tightened the seals on his helmet, the black visor glowing faintly as the suit's systems adjusted. His HUD flickered with data, atmospheric pressure, energy readings, predictive combat models. The armor's synthetic voice hummed in his ear, steady as a heartbeat. Adaptive layer integrity, 98%. Stored kinetic potential, 62%. Warning, plasma saturation threshold approaching. The suit was strained but far from breaking. Hale clenched his gauntlets into fists, flexing the servos that hummed with contained energy. Every motion made the armor feel alive, like a second skin forged from steel and lightning. Opposite him stood General Karzul, a towering beast of muscle and crimson-plated fury. His 4 burning eyes glowed beneath a jagged helm as he hefted the war axe with ease. Its blade pulsed with molten light, each beat a promise of ruin. "This ends now, human," Karzal snarled, his voice thick with venom. "Your trickery dies under my axe." Hale tilted his head slightly, as though amused. "Then stop talking and swing it." The crowd hissed in collective shock at the human's audacity. The first clash. Karzal moved first. Despite his massive frame, he was shockingly fast. The war axe came down in an overhead arc, glowing with energy. It struck Hale square in the chest. The ground erupted in a spray of dust and shattered stone. The sound of impact rang like a thunderclap across the cliffs. When the haze cleared, Hale still stood. His armor had absorbed the blow, though the HUD screamed warnings as the adaptive layers shifted to compensate. Impact absorbed, 34% capacity increase. Redirect energy? Y/N. Yes, Hale muttered. The armor pulsed. The energy Karzal had unleashed surged into Hale's gauntlets, wreathing his fists in a halo of blue fire. He struck back. Hale's punch connected with Karzal's plated chest, not enough to pierce the alien's armor, but enough to send the towering general skidding back several meters, boots gouging trenches in the dust. The crowd howled in disbelief. A human had just knocked their general off balance. Fury unleashed. Karzal roared, the sound shaking the bones of every soldier present. His war axe spun in wide arcs, each swing laced with burning energy. Hale weaved between them, his armor predicting movements a fraction of a second before they landed. Each time the axe connected with his suit, energy rippled across his frame, absorbed and stored. The alien general pressed harder, striking again and again, his fury mounting. Sparks flew as steel met energy, and the ground beneath them began to crack under the strain of their duel. Hale's HUD chimed again. Stored kinetic potential, 94%. Critical discharge available. Perfect timing, Hale muttered. Karzal raised his axe for another devastating strike, but Hale moved first. He surged forward, gauntlets glowing brighter than a forge fire. His fists crashed into the haft of the axe, diverting the blow, then drove upward in a brutal uppercut. The redirected energy discharged at once. The shockwave ripped outward like a detonation, hurling dust and rock across the field. Soldiers staggered, shielding their eyes as a pillar of blue light erupted around the combatants. When the glow faded, Karzal had been thrown to one knee, his chest plate dented from the human strike. The whispers in the crowd turned to open fear. The armor's secret. The Dominion soldiers had believed the armor nothing but a shield. Now they began to understand it was more, much more. It was a weapon. Hale's voice came through the translator, steady and calm, amplified by his suit. You should have studied the details before you mocked it. The Aegis suit doesn't just absorb. It adapts, learns, redirects. He raised a gauntlet, arcs of residual plasma crackling between his fingers. Every time you hit me, you make me stronger. The crowd erupted in panicked murmurs. Some soldiers snarled in denial, others took a step back, their faith in their general cracking like glass. Karzal forced himself upright, his 4 eyes burning brighter with rage. Blasphemy, he spat. No shell can withstand the fury of a Dominion general. Guess you'll be the first to prove otherwise, Hale said. The turning tide. The duel intensified. Karzal unleashed a flurry of strikes, each one more desperate than the last. His axe screeched as it cleaved through the air, sparks flying with every clash. Hale's armor drank in the punishment, his body moving like a shadow, slipping, redirecting, retaliating. Each strike he returned carried the weight of 2 blows, the general's own power and Hale's precision. The ground became a battlefield within a battlefield. Craters opened where they struck. Dust storms whipped across the arena, lit by the glow of alien fire and human energy. Soldiers clung to their weapons, some too afraid to look, others unable to tear their eyes away. Finally, with a roar of fury, Karzal swung wide. Hale stepped inside the arc, his armor channeling every stored jewel into his gauntlet. He struck the general's chest in a single devastating blow. The crimson plates shattered. Karzul was hurled backward, his massive frame crashing against the obsidian platform where he had once stood in command. The impact fractured the stone, sending cracks spiderwebbing outward. The general staggered, gasping, one hand clutching his ruined armor, and the crowd fell silent. The human stands. Hale stood tall in the center of the circle, his armor still glowing faintly with residual energy. Dust swirled around him, illuminated by the dying light of the red sun. He spoke, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. You mocked us. You thought this was weakness, fragility. But here's the truth: humans don't build armor to look impressive. We build it to win. His visor reflected the terrified faces of the soldiers encircling him. And every strike you throw at us? It just makes us hit back harder. The murmurs spread like fire. The Dominion soldiers looked from their broken general to the unshaken human. Fear took root in their hearts, a fear no general's roar could silence. Karzul's last stand. But Karzul was not finished. With a guttural roar, he rose once more, blood seeping from his wounds. He raised his war axe in both hands, its energy sputtering but alive. His body trembled with fury and pride. I will not be shamed by a lesser species, he bellowed. If I fall as a storm upon your kind. He charged, his massive frame a blur of crimson and fire. The axe descended in a final, desperate strike meant to cleave Hale in two. Hale braced himself, every system in his armor screaming warnings. Critical strike detected. Survival probability, 41%. Redirect energy. Maximum overload authorized. Do it, Hale growled. The axe struck. The armor erupted. Every joule of stored energy unleashed at once, detonating outward in a blinding storm of blue light. The shockwave expanded like a tidal wave, engulfing Karzul and hurling him through the air. The war axe disintegrated, molten fragments scattering like sparks from a forge. When the light faded, the general lay motionless at the edge of the arena, his armor shattered, his weapons gone. And Hale still stood. The aftermath. Silence hung heavy, not the silence of awe but of fear. The Dominion soldiers looked upon the human not as prey, not as a curiosity, but as something far worse, an enemy who could not be broken, only endured. Hale's visor turned toward them, reflecting their trembling ranks. You wanted proof, he said quietly. Now you have it. He raised his gauntlet, energy still crackling faintly across its surface. And remember this, humanity doesn't back down. Not when mocked, not when threatened, not ever. No one moved, no one spoke. For the first time, the Dominion warriors understood why humans were feared. Not because of their numbers, nor their weapons, but because they turned every weakness into strength. And in that moment, a single man in black armor stood taller than an empire. The shockwave across the stars. The dust had barely settled on the cracked training field of Varys IV when the Dominion soldiers realized the unthinkable had happened. Their general Karzul, a titan of war, conqueror of worlds, breaker of rebellions, lay broken at the edge of the arena, his once mighty crimson armor shattered and dim. And the human still stood. Sergeant Marcus Hale's black armor pulsed faintly with dying arcs of energy, steam rising from its surface. His chest rose and fell with steady rhythm. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't celebrating. He simply existed, unbowed, unbroken. That alone terrified them more than any roar of triumph could. The crowd, once rowdy and mocking, now rippled with silence. Soldiers shifted uneasily, claws tapping nervously on weapons that suddenly felt useless. 1,000 alien eyes fixed on Hale, yet not one dared move. The fear wasn't of his fists. It wasn't even of the armor. It was of the truth he represented, that the Dominion's deadliest weapons had failed. The shattered command. Karzul stirred, groaning as he tried to rise. His 4 eyes burned with rage, but his body betrayed him. The energy blast from Hale's final strike had fried the circuits of his war axe, scorched his plating, and broken bones beneath. He collapsed again, a defeated giant. General Karzul. Hale's voice echoed through the translator, calm and steady. Your army sees you beaten. They know now that you cannot protect them from us. The soldiers bristled, snarling at the audacity of the human's words, but none stepped forward. Hale continued, his voice slicing through the silence like a blade. You mocked Earth. You mocked humanity. But the truth is simple, we don't build to impress you. We build to survive you. And if you come for us, if you ever think to crush us again. He raised a gauntlet, faint arcs of energy still flickering across its surface. You'll find that everything you throw at us just makes us stronger. The silence broke not with cheers, but with whispers, spreading like wildfire. Fear disguised as rumor hardening into belief. And in the heart of Dominion territory, a seed of doubt had been planted. Whispers in the ranks. That night, the garrison was restless. The Dominion soldiers muttered in hushed tones across the barracks. Words like invincible, unbreakable, death drinker spread from lip to lip. What had begun as mockery now curdled into legend. Some swore they'd seen the armor feed on fire itself. Others whispered that humans were not flesh and blood at all, but machines of war disguised as men. Commanders tried to silence the chatter, but it was like damming a flood. Every soldier who had witnessed the duel carried the memory etched into their minds. A human standing against the Dominion's might and enduring. Fear wasn't the Dominion way, but the seed had been sown. The report. In the command spire of the garrison, Karzul lay restrained in a healing cradle, his body swathed in bioluminescent gel. His second in command, a sharp-eyed strategist named Vaith, activated the long-range transmitter. This event must be contained, Vaith hissed to the other generals of the Dominion. A singular anomaly, nothing more. But even as he spoke, the hollow feeds carried footage from soldiers' visors. The duel, the blasts, the shockwave already spreading beyond their control. On distant stations, Dominion commanders replayed the images again and again, unease settling in their chests. On neutral worlds, traitors whispered of humans who wore death itself as armor. And in hidden corners of the galaxy, enemies of the Dominion smiled. Hale's reflection. Hale sat alone in his quarters, helmet resting on the table before him. His body ached, his ribs bruised beneath the adaptive layers, but he was alive. More importantly, the message had been sent. He replayed the suit's logs. The armor had reached 112% energy saturation during the duel, an overload that should have destroyed it. And yet, it had held. Barely. This thing's gonna get me killed one day, Hale muttered with a dry chuckle. Or it's gonna save us all. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't asked to be a symbol. He hadn't asked to carry humanity's defiance on his shoulders. But on that battlefield, surrounded by jeering aliens, something had clicked. The Dominion didn't fear numbers. They didn't fear fleets. They feared what they didn't understand. And humans? They had a talent for being misunderstood. The galaxy reacts. Within days, the story of Varys ignited across the stars. On Dominion-controlled worlds, propaganda officers scrambled to discredit the tale. They labeled it heresy, a trick, an exaggerated rumor. But the harder they tried to suppress it, the more it spread. Soldiers whispered in the barracks. Citizens muttered in marketplaces. Merchants carried the story from port to port. Neutral worlds, long cowed by Dominion might, clung to the tale like a spark of hope. If one human soldier could withstand the Dominion's fury, perhaps the Empire wasn't invincible after all. And among the scattered remnants of humanity, hidden colonies and rogue fleets, the story became something more, a rallying cry. He stood against 1,000,000 jeers, they whispered. He endured their fire, and he won. The Dominion Council. In the high citadel of the Dominion, the Supreme Council gathered. Towering generals and shadowy strategists encircled the Grand Hollow, replaying the duel in cold silence. Karzul's defeat was humiliation enough. But the implications, the armor, the humans' defiance were far worse. This cannot be allowed to spread. One hissed, mandibles clicking in agitation. If the outworlds believe humans cannot be killed, rebellions will ignite. They cannot be unkillable, another countered. No creature is without weakness. We must find it, exploit it, before they spread their technology further. The chamber echoed with debate, but beneath it all a current of fear thrummed. A fear the Dominion had never admitted before. For the first time they spoke of humans not as prey, not as pests, but as equals. The last warning. Back on Varys 4, Hale received new orders. A discreet transmission from Earth Command crackled through his secure channel. The Dominion has seen enough. Exfiltration teams en route. Hold position until retrieval. And Sergeant, you've just become the most dangerous man in the galaxy. Hale exhaled slowly, staring at his reflection in the black visor of his helmet. He didn't feel dangerous. He felt tired, bruised, mortal. But he knew the truth. The Dominion didn't fear the armor. They didn't even fear him. They feared what he represented. A human who had taken their deadliest blow and stood tall. Epilogue, The Echo. Weeks later, across a distant neutral world, a group of alien mercenaries huddled in a dim cantina. The hollow feed above the bar replayed the duel for the 100th time. Shaky footage captured from a soldier's visor. They watched as the human endured the plasma blast. They watched as he struck down the Dominion general. They watched as he stood tall in the settling dust, armor glowing like a living storm. One mercenary leaned back, his spined crest trembling. "I thought humans were weak," he muttered. Another shook his head slowly. "Not weak, just waiting for someone stupid enough to test them." The holofeed froze on Hale's final words. "Everything you throw at us just makes us stronger." The cantina fell silent, and across the galaxy, the legend of the unbreakable human grew.